Rogue Logic. This is the way.
Rogue Logic. On the Road Edition.
Well, welcome to Rogue Logic on the road. I had unexpected things to do today, so I'm going to save time and do another on the road video. So today's topic is something that I needed to get back to, and it is concerning the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, there's two things that I want to accomplish in this video, and I will say right in the beginning, if one of these things really does pertain to long-time comic book fans. So I'll get that one out of the way first, and then if you're not a comic book fan and don't really give a rat's ass about that aspect of this, you can just skip to there. But okay, so that's the first part. The second part is what has been happening with a lot of the people who are kind of grouping the Marvel Cinematic Universe together as in, well, they're either all good or they're all bad. And I have a big problem with that. It's a really bad generalization. Just like any generalization is usually a bad idea. So let me go back to the comic book aspect of it. If you're a long-term comic book fan, you're going to have an issue with almost any retelling of the story. Almost. Not always. I mean, over the years, due to the fact that CGI has become so complex, and because so much money is put behind these movies and the level of acting, I mean, we're getting the best of the best to play these characters. So, not always, but quite often, it's very difficult for people who are comic book fans like myself. And this is where, yes, of course, this is where this comes in.
Would you say you're a geek, dork, or straight up
right.
nerd?
Get it all out.
Probably all three. Dungeons and Dragons. Anyone?
Right. Any one of those terms, I will more than likely
love Doctor Who as well.
That's true too. I do have a Doctor Who t-shirt as well as a Doctor Who overcoat. So yes, I am full in on that. All right, getting that out of the way. It's difficult for long-term comic book fans because you're expecting to see the characters that you love, that you grew up with, that you've read about, and everything just come to life in the screen. And sometimes when they do it magnificently, and sometimes they don't. So let me give you an example here of what I'm getting at. The first Iron Man movie, which arguably started the MCU, I guess a couple people think that, or include the Hulk movie that was right before that. That's the one with Edward Norton. And I don't, only because the Abomination was in that movie, and that did get put into all of the MCU movies as far as, oh my gosh, Tim Roth. And so who knows, whatever. That movie was that was Iron Man. I mean, other than the fact that they had to move up the timeline, because obviously Iron Man came out in 63 or 4. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'll put it up here. And they had to change the time period, and Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man and is Tony Stark. He's just, first of all, one of my favorite actors anyway, but he's just fantastic. He brings the role to life, and I don't see anyone could have done it better. So, you have a movie like that. Now, are there tiny little things that a comic book fan could find an issue with? Yeah, little ones. But overall, it was a great way to present Tony Stark and Iron Man to the general population who may have very little knowledge of the character or whatever. So what I'm getting at is comic book fans, really this MCU complete universe, there's nothing wrong with doing this, because that's what makes a comic book movie so great, is the ability to have all of the characters. Marvel, for instance, finally having 99% of their characters available to interact with one another. So, and DC at this point as well is, basically has the rights to use all of their characters, and they're trying to put a cohesive story together with James Gunn and the other person, I don't remember his name right now, I'll try to put that up here, taking over and making a cohesive universe that all fits together. Now, why is that important? Because prior to that, when you have it's all fiction. I mean, we all know this. I know that it makes it sound like comic book fans are rabid dorks, and to an extent we are, but it just isn't as much fun when you don't have everything available. So here's the 2 points I'm going to try to move this along quickly here and say. Number one, I think the problems that are going to be surfacing with the Marvel Universe, movie universe continuing, is that you have a core group in both Marvel and DC Comics. In DC, you have that trinity of Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. And it's just like this, the bedrock of the whole DC universe. And for me personally, and this is where, everyone has different opinions about this, but for me, Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, and Henry Cavill are just the perfect. It's the same as with Robert Downey Jr. This is perfection in casting. And now I'm not talking about perfection in all the movies. I think Wonder Woman, the first movie, was almost perfect. The second one was unwatchable. Man of Steel, almost a perfect new representation of Superman, bringing new aspects but keeping the essence of the character. Fantastic. Superman versus Batman and the Justice League, yeah, not so much. But I love Ben Affleck as both Bruce Wayne and Batman. I think he does an excellent job, and the problem was the writing. Obviously, DC was in a horrible rush to catch up with the Marvel Universe. They did not think things out fully, and it just was a mess. Now, that doesn't mean some of the people who were cast, like Jason Momoa, Henry Cavill, as I mentioned, Gal Gadot, and Ben Affleck, I think are all perfect representations of the characters, incredible actors, and everything. The problem was the script and the writing with some of the other movies. So switching back to Marvel, the MCU, you've got their trinity in a way, especially done in the movies. Again, you have these three perfect jobs of casting. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark and Iron Man, Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Thor being Chris Hemsworth. You couldn't do better for that version of their trinity to start the whole movie universe. But here's the issue, and this is the part that makes it rough. For the Marvel universe, there isn't really a trinity. There's more of what they called the Illuminati, and that's where I think going forward it's going to be difficult, and I do have a footnote to that, so just give me a second. So it's going to be difficult because in the Marvel universe, I think the bedrock of what makes it so great is Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, Charles Xavier, leader of the X-Men, Namor, the real Namor from Marvel, not what was in the movie Wakanda Forever, which, oh, and by the way, and Chadwick Boseman playing T'Challa and Black Panther, I cannot express, I've never seen, it's like he came off the pages of the comic book. So, right up there with the Robert Downey Jr. and just incredible casting, and the loss of Chadwick Boseman is just so heartbreaking, and I feel so much for his family and friends, and it's a loss that was just horrific. And in my opinion, I watched Wakanda Forever. I don't blame them for making the second. I mean, what were they going to do? I don't know. If I were in charge, if I almost would have said, let's not do it, but they wanted to do a tribute to him, and I think that they accomplished that. Although, as a long-term comic book fan, Namor, to me, nothing against the actor whose name I can't think of right now, but I just couldn't really get on board with that. And that was done because Namor is one of the few characters that Disney does not have complete control over, so they had to change it quite a bit. But anyway, so what I was getting back to is that Illuminati of characters is the bedrock of the Marvel Universe. So now, with the sacrifice of Tony Stark, Iron Man, saving the universe, in the movie universe, yes, if you don't keep that as it is, and by the way, I should, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, also, no, I just don't think anyone could have done that character as well as Scarlett Johansson, and so I didn't mean to leave her out. But both of them being gone is difficult, and here's what I'm getting at. For me, now, they're going to be introducing the Fantastic Four and the X-Men again, and hopefully doing it correctly, because we don't even need to talk about the, bad. I don't think there's a word that describes it.
Horrifically horrendous.
All right. Yeah, no, I think you may have hit on something there. All right, so back to what I was saying is, so these characters lay the groundwork, and they're the ones who I think make everything work. So I do believe going forward it's going to be a little problematic not having Iron Man and not having, the Fantastic Four. They're going to be new when they should have been at the very beginning. It's going to be kind of weird having like a younger Reed Richards and a younger Charles Xavier and everything. But that being said, I myself could think of a couple things, and this is still the comic book fan here. I would write it in that basically the Fantastic Four were lost, and through some, there's many, many different ways you could put this into the story. The memory of them has been wiped out for one reason or another. Some villain.
Doom lives.
And Doctor Doom goes into this category too. It just seems like, where were these characters when all of the other stuff was happening? And where they were in limbo because they didn't have the legal rights to them. So, all that being said, the way around, and Xavier could have used mind control to keep everyone in the dark about the X-Men and make them forget that they exist. So, there's ways around it. But what I'm going to say is this, is that the Marvel Universe is a different universe, part of the multiverse that they introduced. And so they have that's where the comic book fan can let it go, and that's what people have to do, such as me, is that Marvel has numbered all of the multiverse that they introduced. And the multiverse, the main universe, is 616 in the comics. So all you really have to do to enjoy all of the movies, in the sense that they're different than the comic books, is that this is an alternate reality. So in this reality, the Fantastic Four came around much later, and the X-Men may have been in hiding, but they weren't really part of it. So it's all workable, and they have the multiverse, and they have other versions of each character. So there you go. It's something that we have to contend with. So now on to my second point. This is where you can skip. It is 15 minutes and 11 seconds into the video. So here's the problem for the people who are just movie fans, who may not have any connection to the comic books, may not really care one way or another. And that's this generalization by certain directors and certain moviegoers and certain critics that, oh, the MCU, that is a horrific thing to do. And I know Martin Scorsese, I think, is very critical of it. And yeah, he's a great movie maker. I there's no doubt about it. But what would people think if all that was said was, oh, well, all mob movies are on the same, they're all on the same playing level? Well, that's utterly ridiculous. So not judging each Marvel Universe film by its own merit, by the acting, by the script, by everything, the effects, it is really selling short some incredibly well-told, heartfelt stories that have a lot of characterization, have a lot of depth, and you just are really making a big error doing that. So I would say to people who are in this habit, don't take the Marvel movies and go, oh, it's superhero stuff, it's all the same. It's radically different. And a couple examples I'm going to give of that is, I'm going to say it again, Iron Man was a great start. The cast was incredible, and it just was a great place to start off the Marvel Universe. And then you've got and Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner and the Hulk, also incredibly cast. Paul Rudd being Ant-Man. I think that now I have not seen Ant-Man Quantumania. I don't care for reviews because it's someone's opinion. Now, it overwhelmingly got panned by both critics and fans and comic book readers, but I've had that happen with movies, and I didn't agree with what everyone said at all. So I'm waiting to see it. And, for instance, I think another really good example is the movie The Eternals. And everyone, more or less, just, oh, we hate this. But here's the thing. I think Marvel and Disney at that point did not consider the fact that the Eternals were not well known enough, and they had incredible star power in the movie. And I just don't think that your regular audience kind of really understood what was going on. And yes, there were changes, as always. The Eternals from the comics, not exactly the same as the Eternals in the movie, but I found it to be interesting, and I've known about the Eternals since I was a kid. And, these are characters that also go way back to the late 60s. So, they're as familiar to me as the Avengers. So I think that's where the problem was. I enjoyed that film. And I think there are parts of it that maybe I wasn't so thrilled with, but overall I enjoyed it. And then if you also include the Disney television shows, like, for instance, Werewolf by Night. I've been reading Werewolf by Night since I was a kid in the 70s, and I loved the way they did it. I mean, taking that black and white and the feel of a Universal monster movie and updating it, it was just geniusly done. And then the Ant-Man movies, I was getting back to that. Aside from Quantumania, which I can't really make any judgments about, I haven't seen, The other two had just the right amount of comedy, comic relief. It was really had depth of the character, and he, being kind of a screw up and having his daughter and wanting to be a better dad and a role model, and yet having awesome action as well as some awesome special effects because of the size changing. So, there you go. You've got that. Then you've got Thor Ragnarok, which put in, if you are a comic book fan, I'll go back to that, put in aspects of really big storylines from the comic books, and World War Hulk being one of them, and just a great mixture. Jeff Goldblum was excellent as the Grandmaster, and it just had such a perfect mix of everything, comedy and drama and action. And then you get Thor Love and Thunder. Now,
it was quite painful.
I couldn't even watch it through on Disney, where I'm just paying for my Disney Channel, fee. I did eventually get through it, and it took me several seatings, and it was just, I skipped around. And again, this is not the fault of Christian Bale or Chris Hemsworth or Natalie Portman. This is bad writing. This is poor judgment on a final script, and just people not, it just really should never have made it to the theater. And then you've got weak points with Iron Man 2 and 3 having weak parts. Again, I think a lot of that had to do with the script and the writing. Gwyneth Paltrow is excellent as Pepper Potts. I just think that where they fall is the writing. And I think a lot of people who just will write off a superhero movie don't see the nuances of what these actors are bringing to a character that maybe you don't know anything about, but they are very complex characters that have a lot of depth and a lot of different facets to them. Tom Holland, of course, as Spider-Man is fantastic. I enjoy him being in that role of looking for a mentor in Tony Stark, and that also plays into major storylines from the comic books that they combined a little bit, like Civil War and whatnot. The Captain America movies. The first Captain America, right on par with the first Iron Man. I mean, the heart that Chris Evans brings to Steve Rogers before he has the serum, and it's just so well done, and the time period that is and Agent Carter, who I can't think of her name right now, I'll put that up here, and of course Bucky, who later is the Winter Soldier, is excellent. And again, I'm having a little bit of a issue right there. I'm forgetting his name.
Sebastian Stan.
Sebastian,
get with it.
What is it? Well, anyway, I'll put it up here and I'll write that off to my forgetfulness.
That's putting it
yes,
mildly.
Yes, I do have that. But mostly through this video, I've been really good.
I guess so.
Thank you. So where was I? I was hitting some of the highlights, and I'm probably leaving something out, but I don't need to go a lot further. What I'm trying to say is basically, don't write off a whole movie genre and just decide that they're all the same. It's not fair to the actors. It's not fair to the genre of film. And it's really just, you could also even go into some independent films that are technically superhero films. And, it all depended on the writing. It all depended on the actors, and it's like any other movie. So I do really dislike it when people just write off that, because it's really a subgenre of science fiction. Now, of course, science fiction and fantasy also quite often get grouped into, these aren't serious movies. Well, that's just simply not the case. I mean, Game of Thrones proved that to the whole world, that, you know, you can have a mythical place, and the amount of detail that George R.R. Martin put into the world of Westeros, the incredible actors who are all involved in that, Sean Bean and everyone. I'm not even going to try to name everyone now. Kit Harington, everyone. Just, I don't think there was a bad performance in Game of Thrones. Now, that's another video. I'm not even going to touch that now, because I did not have the books bogging me down because of my huge amount of reading of fantasy. Game of Thrones just slipped by for me. I don't know what happened. I don't know what I was doing when it came out. Never read them. I read the first book after the show had started, and I enjoyed it, and I may even get back to it, but I don't want to fall into the trap of so many people I know who are just so upset because he's not finishing the books. And, you know, that's really up to him. I mean, it just is kind of bizarre that he won't. But then again, the guy has, you know, went from, you know, an obscure writer who, not obscure, he had a level of success with his novels, of course, and everything, and some other writing that he's done. But, you know, suddenly he's just the epitome of the author that has just become world renowned. So he can do what he wants, but I don't want to be bogged down in that world where I'm waiting years and years and years for the sequels to these shows, or to these books, and never getting it. So anyway, I went off track, which I do a lot. I'm going to try to wrap it up and say, so again, the points I made here: number one, if you're a comic book fan, you kind of have to let go of the comic book world a little bit and realize that it's a different universe on the screen. And as a general moviegoer, please, you know, if you enjoy some of these movies, and even if it's just like for kind of fun entertainment, don't put them all in one category. Just because the MCU, I haven't really talked about DC much because they're just getting started trying to get that together. You know, it doesn't mean that each movie doesn't have its own merit, dependent upon the actors and their ability and their experience and the script writing and, you know, the way they have it presented as far as everything else. So I'm going to leave it at that. The sun is in my face, and that's okay. Everyone, please be kind to one another whenever you can, which is almost all the time. And always, please, be kind to our animal friends. We are their voice, and they need us to speak up for them. All right, peace, everybody.